Getting started in the software industry as a backend Java developer used to be about learning a programming language and a couple of frameworks to build applications, and you were all set. These days, it's no longer the case. With the rise of DevOps, and more importantly, the cloud, the learning journey that a new software developer has to go through has gotten more and more expansive. In this episode, I talked to someone who has been teaching thousands of students for more than a decade. Ranga is a founder of In 28 Minutes. You cannot be a backend developer and have not seen at least one of his courses. He's a powerhouse course creator on Udemy, and he's also a good friend. In this episode of The Artifact, I talked to him about his journey into the software industry, teaching, and I asked him some important questions on his current focus area of cloud technologies. This is The Artifact, a podcast that aims to help software developers grow, get better, and be happier. There were a bunch of questions I wanted to ask you, but I want to start out with a very important question. You have a training platform and a training curriculum under the name In 28 Minutes. You've been doing this for 10 years now? Or more than that? Was that roughly the case? Yeah. So in those 10 years, has anybody come to you with a complaint saying, I bought your course for In 28 Minutes, but it went longer than 28 minutes, so I want my money back? Has that ever happened, Ranga?
Yeah, not often, but a couple of times.
Seriously?
Yeah, seriously. A couple of times I saw reviews saying the course is titled In 28 Minutes, but the course is longer than 28 minutes. And it were like 1-star reviews. So I'll remember them for a long time.
Okay, so that was supposed to be a joke question, and I should have expected this. I should have expected that you got some complaint about this. Okay, well, that's interesting.
Absolutely.
Have you ever considered making a course only within 28 minutes, Ranga?
Actually, the first few videos I created, I think the first one which I tried to create was something on Maven. Mm-hmm. Initially, right? I mean, over these 10 years, initially I was creating content on YouTube. I did not have any plans to really create a full-time brand or something. Just we started on YouTube, and only after 5 years of that journey, I realized, okay, this is something which can be something I can do for a long term. Right? That's where I realized it. And then I just wanted, okay, let's create a brand in 28 minutes. So the In 28 minutes thing came a little after. And after I decided In 28 minutes is the brand name, I thought, okay, let's create a few videos just having 28 minutes in length. Yeah. And that was a big failure because when you're teaching, you want to focus on the content. You want to make sure that the learner understands the content and not on the duration of the video. Yeah. And I tried it for a few videos. I decided, okay, no, that's not good. I mean, my name In 28 Minutes was more to represent continuous learning. So it's like you have to learn for 30 minutes every day, something new. So that's basically the concept. I was pretty passionate about it at that particular time. And even now, I really believe if you want to learn something new, it's better to spend some time every day than a big block of time.
Yeah.
So I feel that gives you the time. Yeah. It gives you the time to not only learn, but also it helps you to think about what you learn.
Yeah.
So it helps you to assimilate all the knowledge and remember it for a long time. So yeah, that's what, that was the story behind In 28 Minutes.
Interesting though. So you have around, 20,000 courses on Udemy or something crazy like that. What led you to start? I'm curious about your journey. How did you get into software development to begin with, and then how did you get into the teaching side of things?
Yeah, I think software development was pretty easy. I did my BTech in computer science. I failed my first programming class. I have never failed in anything before that, so it caught my interest. That's the first thing I really failed in Pascal exam, and for 6 to 8 months, I was in a lab or in a library reading something or working out a few programs. And that's where my programming journey started, right? I started with C, C++, and graduated to Java. And over a period of time, I actually gained a lot of experience building a lot of variety of Java applications, right? We had the entire journey on Java side, from like JSP servlets to whatever we have today. So that was the journey I went through. I was performing various kind of roles: programming, design, architecture. So I mean, obviously, like I'm in the IT services world, so architecture is what gives you money. But I was passionate about programming, so I kind of found roles which helped me stay in touch with programming and still be able to handle high level things, like draw diagrams at that particular point in time, and also like be hands on, set up things, create unit testing frameworks and things like that. So I was in touch with technology the whole way, even though like typically in IT services, like at the end of 15 years or 20 years, somebody would be like a principal architect or something. I was like passionate about code, so I wanted to be very, very near to code. So that's like my journey on the like job side of things, right? Now coming to the other content side of things, like as I said, 10 years back is when I started creating content on YouTube. Like one of the first inspirations was you. Like I looked at Java Brains, the initial videos, and I thought, okay, this is something which we can probably do as well. So I also had a lot of experience at that particular point in time. I was working day in and day out on things like unit testing, test-driven development, solid principles. So those were some of the things which were interesting to me, and started creating some content around it on YouTube. And that's how the journey started. For almost 5 years, it was on and off. When I get time, I create content, kind of like not consistent at all. Like I also traveled to Netherlands, US. So it was not a consistent thing at all. So it was more of, I got started, whenever I get motivated, I put a video out, and rest of the time it was just empty. And also over a period of time, I realized YouTube is not the place where I can build an entire career just doing content on the technical side. Maybe for other things it might work, but on the technology side of things, programming, design, architecture, I did not feel, okay, it can scale up to a level where I can go full time. So that's where I've started exploring other platforms. And that's where I found Udemy. Like I tried about 100, 200 platforms. Wow. And Udemy was the one which gave me the first initial success, right? I put out a few courses out there. I saw traction. And yeah, as soon as I saw traction, I went all in. So I started creating a lot more content on Udemy. And yeah, that's what got us here today.
That's interesting. So I feel like I kind of agree with you about YouTube not being the ideal platform for courses, and I think that's another it's another restriction. Just like you said earlier about like if you were to make courses in 28 minutes, you wouldn't be making a lot of good courses because you're just setting an artificial restriction on your content. So I feel like YouTube is also one of those things. Like if you have to do YouTube, and people who actually create content on YouTube know this, you have to play YouTube's game, right? You have to do the clickbaity thumbnails. You have to make it shorter videos. It shouldn't be too long. Like if you make like a 2-hour long video, and most people drop off in 10 minutes because they're like, yeah, I'm going to go watch this later. YouTube is going to think this video isn't good. So it's going to rank it down. So it's like, it's another artificial constraint. The YouTube of today is no way close to the YouTube of 10 years back, like when I started, and probably when you started as well. So I can empathize with that because I kind of face that same challenge.
Absolutely. When you have a Pushpa thumbnail on the right-hand side, watching our boring tech videos, I don't think is interesting at all.
It's very distraction heavy. Yeah, that's true. That's true. So you talked about how you got into teaching, but I want to kind of pick your brain a little bit about why you teach. What is it about teaching that appeals to you? So obviously there is the financial aspect to it, but other than that, what else do you look for in your teaching experience?
So if today, if I wake up and think about what gives me the most happiness in my day, right? So it's the feedback from the learners saying they got a job, or they got a promotion, right? So that's kind of the motivation. Like initially I was just creating content because I knew things. Like I knew a lot of things which I thought there was no content around. So I just go and put it on YouTube. That's where I started. And that's where Udemy journey also started, right? So I knew something. I know there is no matching content there. So I thought, okay, let's go and put it out there. And over a period of time, today, for example, the main motivation factor is the reviews that we get back. I mean, basically the changes that we are making to people's careers. We are enabling people to do better at their jobs. We are enabling people to do really, really well at their jobs and thereby their lives, right? So that's the most important motivating factor for me, right? Other than that, I would say, like, if you get into real content creation itself, that's an amazing journey, right? Creating a video, thinking about the process of, okay, how do you want to structure it? How do you, for example, let's say Kubernetes, right? How do you, Kubernetes it has so many angles to look at it from, right? So what's the right angle? What's the first 5 minutes of video should be? What are the things I would really want to focus on? What are the examples I want to use? All that creation part also gives me a lot of happiness. I'm the most happy when I actually am deep into something, deciding, okay, this is the example I want to use, or this is the concept I would want to talk about, or this is how I would want to teach something, right? Your initial videos, I remember, when I saw your web service videos, the web service video of yours sticks in my mind for a long time. Because the way you explain web service in that video is really, really very different from any other explanation that you would get. And that kind of, a process like that really, really makes me happy. Thinking about how to explain something,
right,
how to make it simple, right? So that the content creation journey, right? I don't like the video aspect of it. I don't like the audio aspect of it. But the place where I actually take, okay, this is the goal we want to achieve, and this is how I would break it down. I love that. I love that aspect of making things simple.
It's almost like there is a storytelling aspect to it, isn't it? It's almost like you're telling a story. And I'm glad you talked about the first 5 minutes thing. I struggle with that too. Like the first few things that you cover in a course, like how do you start teaching something? Like you gave the Kubernetes example itself. How do you start teaching someone Kubernetes? Where do you start? That's exactly. I find that very challenging. I'm glad that you spent time on that too. So it's that makes sense.
No, the Kubernetes thing was something which I remember because it was the thing I struggled the most with. I ended up actually doing a recording for 1 hour, 2 times. And then I deleted everything. And then I wrote a chapter. So I said, okay, I'm going to write a book on Kubernetes. How would the first chapter look like? I wrote a chapter. And obviously, right, we want to be hands-on. We don't want to be I hate drawing a picture and telling this is how it works. For me, it's about showing people live, giving a live demo and thereby showing the power of a tool, right? That I feel is something which only techies can do. Right? Only people who are really, really good at it can do, right? Drawing a picture is probably easier. However, taking a right example and showcasing that. So I said, okay, if I'm teaching Kubernetes in a hands-on way, what would the first chapter in the book look like? So I actually sat down for a day, wrote down the chapter, and that's the introduction I use for Kubernetes almost in a lot of places. Today, the lucky thing about that investment I made was I can actually reuse the same introduction in multiple courses, right? So Kubernetes is now so popular that whenever you learn a cloud or DevOps or anything, Kubernetes is right there. So yeah.
I think that's one of the things that makes your courses really popular. I know that a lot of people who are trying to learn on the job tend to appreciate your style of courses. And I don't know if your metrics reflected, but that's kind of like the gut instinct that I got, because you do get into hands-on stuff. Not you do cover theory, but then again, like you said, you like to show rather than to tell, and that is really useful when you're actually working on the job and you're trying to get something done. And I think that's one of the reasons why your courses have become so popular. So that's really nice.
Absolutely. I mean, theory is definitely important, right?
Yeah.
Kaushik, you want to understand the concepts. I actually have a board in here, right? So I want to show this board everybody to focus on the alphabet. The fundamentals are the most important thing. Once you understand the fundamentals, the rest of the things come through, right? I mean, if you talk about Kubernetes, if you understand the fundamentals, it's the most important part. You need to understand the architecture, right? But it's just the approach. The way you tell theory is little different. I take a little different approach where I kind of show it hands-on kind of a way, just like you said, show rather than tell. Mm-hmm. So I like that because I have a feeling people will remember the concept a lot more, for longer if they if they see it in action.
Right. And it's also a bit of a balance because you don't want to be showing like, just do this. You will understand this later. Like if that kind of, I know some people who do that kind of teaching, and that's
No,
not going to
I
make
hate
sense
that.
either. So I think you strike that right balance, which is very helpful.
I hate that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why the first half an hour of the course is the most difficult one to design, because I mean the same thing, right? I hate telling somebody, okay, we'll go to talk about it later, right? Either I tell it right now. I don't want any suspense in the course. And that's the difficult part, right? And that's how like the first part of the course is what is the most challenging one.
Yeah, absolutely. So people who are listening who think making video courses is easy, it's not that easy, right? We sweat over the stuff. Anyway, so I want to talk about like you talked about your journey, and you said your first course was I think servlets or Maven. Which one was it?
Yeah, if I talk about Udemy, actually I had a couple of bombs. I don't want to talk about them.
Okay.
So the first courses on Udemy were not successful. I was like trying to experiment, right? I mean, it's all about experimenting and finding out what's the thing which works, right? So I actually initially created courses on C, C++.
I see.
And the first real course that you would see on my Udemy profile right now would be Spring, right? I have courses on Maven and things like that as well. But the first real course I released was Spring.
How about in YouTube? What was the first? Do you remember the first video?
Yeah, the first video on YouTube was Java in Telugu, I think. One of the C in Telugu or C++ in Telugu. Okay. Like I was actually initially creating content in Telugu because I was not confident about my English, and like I wasn't sure how I was thinking YouTube is a place where everybody watches, so Western audience might leave bad comments on my videos. I was afraid of that. So initially I was creating content in Telugu, and that's where I saw your content. Like I saw your content, like I felt, okay, I connected. Like it was like, okay, this is something which we can do. And if Kaushik is getting good response, probably I can do a little bit there as well. So that's what prompted me towards more of JUnit. Like the first actually real English one I created was JUnit, 4 Principles of Simple Design. I think test-driven development. So yeah, these were kind of the things which I started off with, which were not pretty successful, right? So these are topics which hardly anybody is interested in.
That's interesting, Ranga. We've recently talked about some of these. It's interesting that you kind of started that at that time, because these are kind of like evergreen topics, right? Test-driven development and good code and all that stuff. Exactly. I find it interesting that that was your focus even then. So I remember my first video was on servlets. Okay, I have no idea why I picked servlets, but that's what I did. It's still sitting there as is the first video on my YouTube channel, and every time I watch it, I cringe because like I had no idea what I was doing. As if I have a lot of idea now. It's still trying things out. But yeah, so we were at the time thinking, okay, the things that we need to program are, you just learn some Java. Like for a Java developer, you just learn Java, learn some servlets, some Spring programming, right? And you're good to go, right? You're a Java developer, done learning over JSPs, and Spring, you're covered. But now if you look at a tech stack that you need to learn to be a Java developer, it's almost, I'm kind of trying to put myself in the place of someone who is new. It seems frightening. What do you think? Like, what do you make out of this whole shift in backend technologies to encompass so many different technologies and so many different concepts? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, very difficult question to answer, Kaushik.
It is, yeah. It's like let me be a little more specific. Like, how do you deal with it personally, and also, what advice would you give to somebody who's starting out right now and kind of being overwhelmed by all this technology?
Absolutely, right. See, I would say we had the advantage of slowly taking it step by step over the last 2 decades, right? We started with JSP servlets, or slowly, like I remember my first days with struts. I remember my first days with Spring Framework, and slowly we went into Spring Boot world, like also the parallel architecture journey, right? So we had probably just a web application. Slowly we started focusing on SOAP web services, REST. So we had the gradual journey to microservices, serverless worlds, and the cloud and DevOps world, right? So that was easy for us. But today, I think beginners have a big challenge. But like I found actually in the video that we had where we discussed programming in general, I liked your concept of averaging. Like nobody is expected to know more than what an average learner can learn in a given span of time, right? That's what you said. And I love that, right? So that's exactly, I think, is the right way to think. You do not want to learn everything which is out there. I think if you are a programmer starting off, focus on what you can, focus on learning programming, right? You cannot be the master of everything in one day. It's a journey. So focus on one thing at a time. So if you are starting with, let's say, Python programming or Java programming or JavaScript programming, be good at it first. That's the first goal, right? Being good at programming, understanding at least the fundamentals. Like design and architecture are things which takes a long time, a lot of experience, but at least understand the fundamentals of it, like the basics. You don't want to spend months and years, but at least the basics, like at least, and be hands-on with programming. I think that's where I would say people who are intending to start their careers in tech world can start. And I would say today, probably they can start exploring one of the cloud platforms also. Like, so once they start having good knowledge about their programming, like about whatever skills they need to have to build applications, right? Frameworks are important again. So before cloud, I think frameworks are important. So for example, if you're in the Java world, like you learn Java, you would probably learn Spring Boot and maybe build a really good REST API with Spring Boot, or learn to build a microservice with Spring Boot, right? So just get started. You don't need to be an expert in all of this. Like maybe a month of, like programming is difficult, right? Programming takes a long time. Programming is something you can keep learning over a period of time. Maybe a couple of months of programming, try and write a lot of programs, try and get familiar with it, and then probably get into some of these frameworks. For me, if you're good at programming, learning frameworks is easy. Like learning Spring or Spring Boot today, I don't think is a difficult thing. Building a REST API with Spring Boot is not difficult if you understand what is a REST API and if you know, know what are the important things to learn, right? So it's the most difficult challenge is you don't want to be an expert on Spring Boot, right? A lot of people I see is like, they start with Spring Boot and they want to know every annotation out there, every class which is present in the Spring. That's not possible. It's more about focusing on what you want to build. So focus on building an application with Spring Boot, building a REST API with Spring Boot, for example, right? So that would be a good starting point. And yeah, depending on what you want to go, if you want to go full stack, probably you can learn full stack development. That's like another area we can explore. The other thing I would definitely recommend is the cloud. So I would say programming, frameworks, build something, and then cloud. Because today in the DevOps and the cloud world, in the DevOps world, like where we, like some of the things like Docker, Kubernetes, like CI/CD, these are really, really important things to understand. I feel setting those things up in your local machine is very, very difficult. Compared to that, if you just have a free AWS account or a free Azure account or a free Google Cloud account, it's easy to start exploring all the new stuff on the cloud. So use your local machine to get familiar with building applications, so language, frameworks, and then directly jump into the cloud. Don't worry about DevOps or anything, directly jump into the cloud. And I think that would be the right mix to get started today.
So that would be a good path for somebody who's decided, like, I want to get into backend development and, most likely Java, because Java is still the king for backend development at this point. What about if somebody is kind of trying hard to choose where they want to go? Like, do I do front end or do I do back end or AI or, data science or whatever else, right? So there is a very real thing called choice paralysis is what I call, right? So people are trying to get into the industry, or they have gotten some job as their first job that they didn't choose, but now they have an opportunity to switch to something that's their own decision, right?
Right.
What advice would you give to somebody who's stuck? Like, I don't know what to choose.
Yeah, exactly. If somebody's starting off, I think, it is an easy, they can choose any of these and they will not go wrong. The most important thing I would recommend to focus on is being an expert at it. It's not sufficient if you know it, right? Are you in the top 5% of people who are doing that? Whichever one you pick up, right? So whichever one you have referred to, full stack development or backend development or cloud or DevOps or any of these things, right? Machine learning, data engineering, any of these things, are you in the top 5%? Do you have the capability to get into the top 5% of people who are able to do that, right? If you are able to do that, if you think you are able to do that, and if that's what interests you, go in, right? IT is so vast there are so many technologies that this analysis paralysis would always be there. Like it's not just at the start of the career, but throughout the career, you have to make choices. So it's important. Like I kind of divide this into two phases, right? One is the choice phase and the learning phase. So in the choice phase, spend some time, talk to your friends, see videos of whatever, right? Do whatever you want, figure something out. And then your goal should be to be in the top 5% of whatever like people are in that specific thing and go there. That's your learning phase, right? It's the biggest challenge, biggest problem I see is people jumping from these two phases without mastering anything, right? So deciding phase happens throughout, then you will end up learning nothing, right? So that's how I see it. And your second question regarding experienced people shifting, I feel today, like for example, I have a lot of experience building REST API with Spring Boot, let's say, and I'm looking at what I would want to do next. See, if you're going to data engineering or if you're going to a machine learning, you're jumping into completely new fields where it is not clear if your knowledge you gain over the last 5, 10, 20 years is useful or not. And that's where I would think getting into cloud and DevOps might be a very interesting thing for them to pursue, because it's just a next step to what they are doing. Like if I'm building REST API or if I'm building full stack development, cloud is just the next step. I mean, instead of deploying your application in, let's say, in a like virtual machine on your local machine, you would be probably deploying it in a data center. You'd be probably deploying it to, let's say, Kubernetes on a cloud, right? So it's, I mean, you're making use of all the skills that you already have and you're jumping into the cloud. And the other advantage that I see is like 5 years down the line, DevOps or machine learning or data engineering, almost 95% of those workloads would be running on the cloud. So anyway, if you're going to learn machine learning, you have to learn the cloud. There is no way a machine learning engineer can say, I'm good at writing machine learning algorithms, but I don't want to worry about the cloud. That's not going to happen because everything is going to be on the cloud very soon.
That's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about that. So this kind of like cloudification, for a lack of a better term, as you know, that's happening to application development today, is very likely going to happen to the other streams of work as well, right? And I think it's kind of already happening. Like, isn't like cloud the primary driver for like AI, AI model computation and stuff like that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So most of the data engineering stuff is now in the cloud. Most of the machine learning stuff happens on the cloud right now. And that's why, like, I actually, today, if somebody comes to me and says, I want to start with big data and I want to start with Hadoop, like, I would say, forget it. Go to the cloud and start with BigQuery, right? I mean, because, you don't want to learn what has happened, or I don't want to choose what I want to learn based on what is prominent today, right? A lot of people say, I want to start learning Jenkins to do continuous integration, right? Yes, Jenkins is popular today, but 5 years down the line, Jenkins will not be there. Like it would be something else. It would be something which is in the cloud, which would be doing continuous integration, continuous deployment.
Right.
So go ahead and learn. That perspective is very, very important when you're choosing what you want to learn.
Yeah, that's fair. There was this other concept that used to be popular sometime back called vendor lock-in. I don't know if you've heard that thing. So this was the primary reason why we kind of had enterprise servers, right? So Java EE was the answer for vendor lock-in. And the big focus at the time was, we want to make sure that we don't tie ourselves to one vendor. And if that were to go bankrupt or they raised prices, we can just easily shift over and everything is going to work the same way. And now with the cloud, it's all out the window, right? So people are directly working on, connecting to DynamoDB, not thinking twice about, okay, what happens if Amazon retires DynamoDB tomorrow, or if Amazon goes bankrupt or whatever, right? So very unlikely scenarios. Like, I understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So do you know what is the sense for, among developers and among cloud engineers about vendor locking? Do people even care?
Yeah, it's a it's how we make money, Kaushik. Like I made a lot of money as an architect talking about avoiding vendor lock-in, right? So that's what we did a few years back, trying to prevent from vendor locking. Anything that we would want to do should be probably would kind of use the term, today we use the term cloud neutral, right? So
Cloud
with the
neutral.
popularity of all the things, so we would actually talk about cloud neutral architectures, right? And actually there is obviously when AWS started off, AWS was the only cloud platform. So, there was no cloud neutrality at that particular point in time. Either you want it cheap or you would want cloud neutral. Or you would want to stay neutral. People chose for being cheap, right? So cost is much more important. So that's where the journey started. AWS became popular. And I would say in the last few years, Azure and Google Cloud have also picked up. And now there is more focus on kind of cloud neutral architectures. Right today, Kubernetes, the reason why Kubernetes became really, really popular, earlier, a few years back, few years back, as if 20 years back, it's probably 3-4 years back, probably Kubernetes was not as popular as today, because today we have managed services for Kubernetes in all the clouds. You can run Kubernetes in a data center, and you have services like Anthos in Google Cloud, which help you to run Kubernetes in multiple places and manage it from a single place, right? So there is a focus on cloud neutral solutions. And also you'd see a lot of efforts coming from each of the cloud platforms on trying to make their services also cloud neutral. So there is a big push. BigQuery is one of the most popular Google Cloud offerings, and there's a effort to actually be able to run BigQuery everywhere, kind of, right? So almost all the cloud, for example, ECS or Fargate is the service to do container orchestration in Amazon, and AWS, and they are starting something called ECS Anywhere. You can run it anywhere. So there is also the push from, the cloud providers also understand that, okay, the way to pull more people into the cloud is to say, okay, you are cloud neutral in some way. At the end, anyway, we are locked to the cloud provider, right? It's not just the application you're putting in, applications that we are building is just a small part of the entire software development lifecycle, right? There are a lot of people who are equipped with doing things with that cloud, and shifting away from one cloud to another is very, very difficult. And also the other journey which is happening today is a lot of enterprises are choosing cloud based on specific need. Earlier it was okay, I'm locked to this cloud, but today, if you are, let's say, doing machine learning, probably the best place to do that is a Google Cloud. So people are not, enterprises are not hesitating to go multi-cloud as well.
Yeah, multi-cloud is another interesting thing because they don't want to put all their eggs in one basket. They do okay, some of my workload runs on Azure, some of that runs on AWS. But
exactly.
Do you see cloud neutral as something that will make this whole thing cloud agnostic? For example, now you got to be good at the cloud. You do an AWS certification, learn about AWS, learn about Azure, and so on. Do you ever see there comes a point where you don't learn about a cloud specific thing since everybody's cloud neutral? You learn a technology which is agnostic. It's independent of whether you run on AWS or Azure, and it is a thing in itself. Do you see something like that happening in the future?
I would say see, there are two parts to that, right? One is we will definitely be locked to the cloud. I doubt if cloud neutral is a possibility because, for example, Terraform, we call it cloud neutral, right?
Yeah.
But at the end, what we end up doing is writing different scripts for different clouds. It's not really cloud neutral. And these clouds are so different from each other that I doubt if cloud neutral, cloud agnostic something is possible as a whole, right? But in pockets, it will happen, right? Kubernetes, for example, Databricks on Spark. Right. So in pockets, there will be cloud agnostic solutions which will get popular. That will be a big pool, right? Kubernetes, Databricks, these are getting really, really popular. Snowflake, things like that, right? So those are the things which will start getting more popular solutions. Independent providers providing something which can run on all the clouds. So that's, I think, the direction where we would be heading. More like pockets where you have cloud agnostic or cloud neutral kind of things.
That makes sense. These cloud providers have a financial incentive to do some kind of locking anyway, right? So it's if it's too neutral, then they tend to lose out. Also, stuff like ECS Anywhere. Yeah, it's anywhere, but it's still ECS. So kind of bound by that technology. Yeah. Okay, so I want to ask you about all these different services that are provided by the cloud. So, for example, somebody decides to say, I want to learn about AWS offerings or Azure offerings. like if you go to their website, there are so many services, so a lot of things. It's like you get that same, choice paralysis all over again. It's like, where do I start?
Absolutely. Yeah.
One good way to start is, of course, to check out your Udemy course, where you have, I think, you have an AWS course and an Azure course as well. So your course apart, what would be your advice for somebody who wants to start out on their cloud journey?
Absolutely. I think one thing, as you said, is it's vast. There are so many services, and these services are increasing every day, that being a master at everything is impossible. So it's very, very important to choose the services based on what you're doing. If I'm doing, let's say, programming, and if, let's say, I'm developing REST API, then I would rather focus on the compute part of the services. Like, for example, I would go to AWS and look at compute. Like, what are the options that are available? How can I deploy my application? Let's say I built a Spring Boot application. How do I deploy that Spring Boot application or Python application or Node application to the cloud? So that's where I would initially start. The other part which might be interesting to programmers is databases, right? I will try and focus on the databases aspects. Like, probably I'll try and see, okay, what are the transactional databases which are present in the cloud? And what are the relational ones, and what are the NoSQL ones? So that's a good place to start to understand the important concepts, right? As you start doing this, you will understand that, okay, networking is important, security is important. So these are the two things which are really different from doing something on your local machine versus doing it in the cloud, right? So I think that's the best place to start. Whatever you're doing, if you're doing data engineering, right? So if you're good at doing data engineering, go and explore the data engineering services in a specific cloud and start learning how to do data engineering in the cloud. That gives you a great starting point, because the step up is not so big, because you're just focusing on what you are doing in your local machine or in your data center, and you're shifting it to the cloud. So that's where I would recommend a lot of people to start playing with whatever you have in the cloud. And yeah, as a next step, probably once you have sufficient experience, once you know how your thing works in the cloud, then you have good experience and you understand what a cloud is. Right? Then you can make choices on what you want to learn next, right? Depending on where your enterprise is heading, that's you can choose which ones to focus on. But as with anything, it's important to have a focused approach. It's not going to work if I try to memorize 50 services name and clear an exam, right? That's not going to give me a lot of value. The thing which gives you a lot of value is what you are able to do with the tool, or the cloud is just like a tool, right? So what are you able to do on the cloud? So yeah, that's the most important thing I would focus on.
Yeah, I don't think many people in the whole world know about all these services that either AWS or Azure or GCP offers. There's just way too many, because it's exactly meant for different demographics, right? So you just, your advice makes perfect sense. Look at the services which you can utilize and then start from there. How difficult do you think it is for, let's say somebody picks AWS as their first cloud adventure? They get into it, they learn a little bit. How difficult or easy do you think it is to kind of transfer that knowledge to another cloud like a GCP or an Azure? Are the services similar? Will they have an edge because they learn one cloud, or will they have to start from the scratch?
Right. So I'll take a step back, Kaushik. The way I design my courses is actually, when you look at let's say a course has 100 videos, probably 25 of those videos are cloud neutral videos. So actually I use the same videos in Azure course, AWS course, and Google Cloud course. And that's the answer, right? Yeah, so it's exactly the same, right? A concept of a region, a data center, a availability zone, compute services, storage services, all these are exactly the same in different clouds, right? I mean, finally, what you are doing is what matters, and the cloud is just a place where you host it. Right. So, I mean, all these are similar in that aspect. But when it comes to specific products, there will be differences, right? For example, if you want to do data engineering, probably BigQuery is the place you'd want to start in Google Cloud. BigQuery is very, very different from Synapse Analytics of Azure, or, I mean, let's talk about Redshift in AWS. They are very, very different products. So when you get to a product level in each of the clouds, there will be differences. But conceptual level, I think they are very similar. So if you have good knowledge on AWS, for example, right, then you'd be able to easily transfer it to Azure and Google Cloud. But your knowledge on Redshift, for example, is not transferable to BigQuery directly. I mean, it's useful. It's a good starting point, but it will not be this same. I mean, it's probably if I take the Java example, it's like switching from struts to Spring. Your concepts of building a web application is still the same. However, you're switching framework from one to another. So you have to understand what are the best practices with it. How do you use it in production? Like all that kind of stuff will still be there. So yeah, I think, but most important thing I would recommend people to do is to stick with the cloud for some time, right? It's important to it's like you don't want to learn struts for 2 days and then Spring for 10 days, like 2 days. At the end, you will be confused, right? It's important that you learn one of the clouds very well and then go into other cloud.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I notice people switch is they get to a point, and I'm guilty of doing this too sometimes. They get to a point where the going gets tough, right? Things become difficult, right? So let's say I pick, I want to learn AWS, and like, okay, the initial part is easy. Now it's difficult. Oh man, maybe I should have picked Azure, and they go learn Azure. They end up with the same situation there. So it's like you have to power through at that point. That's that.
And that's where I think certifications really help, Kaushik. I mean, to give a focus. Like usually, like as I told you multiple times, right? I hate certifications, Java certification or whatever. I don't think is a great value. But I think when it comes to the cloud, certifications have a role in helping you understand different services which are available. They help you to get a big picture around everything which is present in the cloud. So I think that's where the value of cloud certifications is. In giving you a big picture, at least you have a high level overview of what are the things, AWS things which are important. Obviously, you have to apply your own common sense and decide what is the selling parts of it and what is the real part of it.
Right.
But it's important to get that knowledge.
So do you think, so you talked about kind of like a persona-based learning experience, right? You say, okay, if I'm a web developer, I look at services which are primarily web developer only. So I'd imagine a certification is a little more well-rounded than that. It's not just one particular persona. But you would still recommend doing that because you kind of get an overview of all the different services, right?
Absolutely. I think, right, things like data warehouse or data lakes or like machine learning, these are things which are happening in the world today, right? Today, machine learning is everywhere. And if you look at the goal of cloud, like I would say the goal of cloud platforms is to simplify machine learning so that you can actually directly run it in a very easy way in the cloud. So they, like today, if you want to, like, let's say, if you want to run a machine learning algorithm outside the cloud, it's very, very difficult. But if you want to take the same thing and you run it on the cloud, it's very easy. And on top of it, there are also a lot of managed services which are provided, which kinds of makes, like, you don't even need to worry about what's the algorithm. Like there are services in, like, for example, Google Cloud or almost all cloud providers, which help you to simplify the journey. Like even a non-techie can kind of do the basic ML stuff on, like, for example, one of the cloud platforms. So you need to understand that. You need to have a overview of what's happening in the industry, right? It's you're good at compute, but it's not sufficient if you're just at compute, because this compute eventually will call some machine learning service in the backend, right? And that machine learning service might be like, yeah. And to learn that, I think the certifications give you a good overview of everything, right? Eventually, almost like the goal of the cloud platforms today is to simplify how you do things, right? Earlier, let's say if I want to set up a Hadoop cluster and run it, the amount of skills that is needed compared to whatever I need to do data engineering today is unmatched. And over a period of time, I see even these becoming services, right? I mean, obviously there will be parts of it which you need really, really good skills to work on, but the cloud platforms will try and make them easily consumable. And that's where I think as developers, we need to understand what these services are.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, we have, we're talking about advice for beginners in the industry, right? And we talked about how, cloud is one of those things that they should pick up and then, pick a path and then go with it and learn it. In addition to cloud, there is one other very important skill that somebody needs to learn for interviews, which is, lead coding and solving coding challenges and all that stuff. So what advice would you give to a new grad or a fresher about balancing learning about all these technologies which are hot and in the market versus doing that stuff? Like how would they balance between the two?
Exactly. I think one thing I would recommend is to look at the job profile you are applying to. Right? So you should have a clear idea about the job profile you're looking at. And if your job profile needs a great knowledge of data structures, algorithms, system design, and things like that, those are the first things you would want to focus on, right? Cloud is something which is easy to learn. Once you're good at these things like system design, data structure, programming, algorithms, data structures, system design, or even things like architecture, right? Writing good code. These are things which are the most difficult things to learn. Cloud is something, I think, if somebody is good at programming, somebody understands the data structures, algorithms really, really well, cloud is something which is easy to pick relatively, right? So relatively, being a great programmer is much more difficult than probably understanding all the services in the cloud, right? So like for me, like focus on the difficult parts first. If you are in the early stage of your career, focus on those elements. But again, look at your goals, right? A lot of people might be applying for roles where they don't need that in-depth knowledge on cloud, on data structures or algorithms. All that they might need is, let's say I'm building a web application, right? If my Java profile is to build a web application, 99% of the time, I would not worry about an algorithm or a data structure, right? If you are writing Java code, the data structure is simple beans, right? Getters, setters, beans, and probably a little bit of structure, but not complicated than that. So you should know what job you are applying to, what kind of applications you're going to build. If you're going to build web applications and things like that, then cloud and DevOps might be things you would want to start with. But if you are going to a role where it needs, like you are going to do complex algorithms, complex computational things, then you obviously focus on data structures and algorithms. So yeah, everything I would say is based on the job profile. A lot of people actually, like today, one of the most frequently questions I ask is, how do I learn DevOps? Okay, what's the job profile you are applying to? Because people say there are 100 things that are part of DevOps, right? I can talk about a tool like Maven. Like a lot of times I even hear Maven is part of DevOps, right? So it's like any and every tool is part of DevOps. So find the job profile. What's the job profile you are applying to? What are your skills? What are the gaps? Work on them. It's not possible to learn everything which is out there.
That's fair. That's fair. The thing though is there are a lot of companies out there who like to ask these kind of leak codish problems just because like a Google does it or a Facebook does it, which is unfortunate.
Right.
I know we have talked about it before as well, Ranga, and we both not really a big fan of like these kind of coding interviews just for the sake of weeding out candidates. But it is, I think it is what it is. And a little bit of that is necessary, but I think it's all about, striking a balance and making sure that you, like you said, learn to become a good programmer in first, which kind of sustains across all these different challenges, right? Whether you learn the cloud, whether you're inverting a binary tree, being a good programmer helps in both cases.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah. What do you have a sense for how the job market is right now? A couple of months back, people were talking about the Great Resignation and all that stuff. They made a big fuss out of it. Is the Great Resignation still on? Do you have any sense for how the market is right now?
Kaushik, to be really, really frank, I'm completely disconnected. I have no idea.
Okay.
But the sense I get is like, at least in the near circle, I hear a lot of people getting big hikes when they switch jobs, right? So a lot of people, and another thing I can see is almost like half my friends have switched jobs in the last year or so. So yeah, people are switching jobs. They're getting huge increments. So that's definitely something I can confirm. And that probably is an indicator that, the job market is kind of doing pretty well.
No, I am actually kind of insulated myself and I don't have a sense for it. So I'm actually curious to know how the situation is. So folks who are listening or watching, if you know, please let me know in the comments. I want to ask you another question. Since you're a course creator, you have a certain idea of what the learning experience ought to be, and you kind of craft that as a course creator. Is there any specific way you expect the course to be taken? Like, do you have a sense for like, okay, I wish people were doing this when they watch my course, right? Like, different people take the course differently. Like, some people sit back and watch. Some people, watch while they're, waiting for something in the line. Some people actually code and follow along and all that stuff. Do you have a preference, or is it like, does it not matter? Like, however the student likes to take it. What do you think about that?
Exactly. Yeah. So like it depends on what your goal with the course is, right? So let's say I'm starting a Kubernetes course, and at the end of it, I would want to understand Kubernetes as a whole. right? Probably I'm not going to use Kubernetes in my day job right away, right? In that kind of situation, the approach I would take would be a little different from somebody who's going to use Kubernetes today, right? Let's say in the next week or next 2 weeks, I would want to start probably doing a project in Kubernetes, right? So if I'm actually trying to get an overview of it, probably the hands-on part is not important, but having a good overview of it is important. So probably watching it without hands-on quickly, just get an overview. And then if you're really interested, if you think that's something which you like, then probably you go in hands-on and code along with me, right? But if you think it's something which you're going to definitely use in your job, go ahead. Like take your laptop, computer, get set and code along with me, right? So do things along with me because that's the best way to learn if you're going to do it on the job. Because the moment you do it here and you do it on the job a month later, you'll remember it for like a very, very long period of time. So yeah, it's the approach is based on how likely you are to use that specific thing. If you're very likely to use it, go ahead, hands-on. If you're not, it's impossible to do hands-on and everything. So just watch it, have fun, and then get a good overview of it. Like I try and understand what the tool is, what it is replacing, why it is needed. Like try and get a big picture so that whenever you come across such a situation, you will be able to identify if this is the right tool for that specific thing.
And can I ask what technique Ranga uses for learning? Like, how do you approach learning something new? Like, can you talk about your process?
Yeah, I think the first thing is like just I said, like I use the process of trying to understand what the technology is first. I would want to get a good overview of it. I would want to understand what are the use cases for it. What is it replacing? How is it different from how does it change how we do things, right? So the entire life cycle from dev, like starting from dev to production, how does it change everything related to that? So I would want to get a good overview of everything related to that. And then probably like if it's something which I like, if I think it's something which I would want to, like if it has potential, like I think as a course creator, that's another thing I would look at, right? So today, probably I would not want to create a course on Jenkins, but if I'm exploring Jenkins, I would probably just think, okay, this is something which was older, like I don't worry about it, so I don't go deep. I understand what it is so that I have good knowledge of that tool, but I would not really go deep into it. But let's say if I'm looking at Kubernetes, right? So there's a chance that I might create a course on it in 3 or 4 years. So I would rather go deep, like try and understand it really, really well, because I see a huge potential for it. So that also plays a huge factor. So it's about getting an overview. I mean, it's like, I have a feeling we cannot go deep into everything, right? You need to understand it at a high level. I mean, having a broad overview is important. Deep skills are specific to wherever I see interest or I see a potential for that topic to do well in the long run.
Yeah, that resonates with me. That's kind of the approach that I use as well. So it's, that's what sustains it because there are so many stuff, right? You have to take that approach to optimize your time. That's cool. I think we are pretty much out of time. I want to end with one last question, which is for this talk. I'm really hoping we get to talk again. Where do you see yourself, in like 5 years from now or 10 years from now? You have quite a legacy with your Udemy courses. They've become super popular. What next in 28 minutes or for Ranga?
Yeah, I don't know the answer, Kaushik. Like the way I actually think is like, I kind of set a big goal for myself and just follow it. Like I don't worry about the time or whatever. Like the initial goal I set myself when I started in 28 minutes was, okay, 20% of the things which 80%, like I'm a big fan of the 80-20 rule. So I thought, okay, what are the things that Java developers use 80% of the time, which fit into the 20% bracket? Right? And I wanted to have a course around each one of them. So that was the initial goal. That's where I started creating around 20-25 courses around Spring Boot. So it was easy because my goal was not on how many learners or how many people are doing the course. No, I wanted to have great learning resources for anybody in the Java world to start their journeys, right? So starting from a developer so that goal kind of motivates me to go forward. Today, like my goal is I would want to provide content which helps people learn and take their first steps into cloud and DevOps, right? That's why I explored AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, like all the important DevOps tools. And I would kind of look at in 28 minutes, like I would want, like when people talk about cloud and DevOps, probably like somewhere in the back of their mind, they should be in 28 minutes. That's the goal right now for me, right? So like that drives me. Like it's like I set that goal and then I don't care about the timelines. I think, okay, what is the right thing to do next, right? So yeah, that's how I kind of decide where to go. I think thinking big is important because that gives you direction, right? If I don't know, because there are so many things to do, right? As a course creator, I might want to let me create a data engineering course or a machine learning course or whatever, right? I might want to explore those fields. So I feel having this goal really gives you the direction where you'd want to head into. And yeah, that's what I focus on, having a goal at a high level, and remaining steps would automatically flow with them.
That's wise advice for anyone really. And we talked about choice paralysis for learners. I don't know about you, but I end up having some choice paralysis sometimes as a course creator. Like, okay, so many technologies. What do I focus on, and what do I invest to teach the audience? I'm pretty sure
I had the same problem, Kaushik.
Yeah.
Actually, between the time when I said 80% of the things that the Java goal, once that was reached, I did not know what to do. For almost 1.5 years, I was struggling. I was not sure, okay, which side should I go to, Python or automation testing or data engineering or machine learning or cloud. I was very, very confused.
Yeah.
And I saw myself trying a lot of different things. And then I said, okay, no, okay, this is not working. Let's focus on one thing. So it's the same thing. I mean, it's the same journey I go through to as well. So I talked about the success points of my goal setting. The failures are a lot actually.
That's always there. Did you get into Python anytime? Did you try that out?
Yeah, I had a lot. I played with Python a long back, and then I think in around 2016, I created a course on Python.
Oh, you did?
So
okay.
Yeah.
Why didn't you?
But it did not
with that. Create more courses.
No, it was I was seeing where I get the right traction. Right, it's very, for me, on Udemy, for example, right. Competition is a very, very important part in the choice of the course, right? For example, Python, there were hundreds of courses. At that particular point in time, I did not even understand Udemy, how it works or things like that, right? My goal was to create so many Java courses. I created them, I put them out there. I solved all the problems that learners face in the Java space. And now I was looking at, okay, what space can we go to next? So I did not think, okay, it should be something based on, okay, I should look at Udemy, understand the market, how it's going, and then decide the choice. Right? So that's not how I thought. I just went in without even thinking. I know, I worked with Python, I worked with automation testing. Okay, let's go and create a course on that. So it was more that way rather than looking at, okay, what are the opportunities out there? How does it match the market? So it there was no supply demand analysis, if I can put it that way. It was more I know it, I create a course. But now I will be more recently, probably from the time we started the cloud and DevOps journey, I'm particularly picky. A lot of there are a lot of requests on create this course, create that course. I mean, I'm sure you have them, right? So you have tons of requests asking you to create content on different topics. But now I have to choose the right thing I want to focus on. So not just my skills, also the market kind of plays a role in what courses we choose.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. Well, I didn't know that you had a Python course. I might have to check it out. I didn't know that you'd gotten into that space. Well, anyway, it was really, really nice talking to you, Ranga. Thank you for giving the time. You started the call saying that the Java Brains videos were an inspiration. Like I mentioned to you many times, the inspiration was mutual. In fact, the whole podcast thing that I'm venturing into now is inspiration from you, from that phone call that we had.
Thank you.
So, it's... I wish you the very best. You're a good friend. And I think one of the reasons why your content has a lot of success is that you put a lot of heart into it. And I'm not just saying that just for the sake of it. I can see that in your content. So I'm very sure that whatever you do next is going to be equally, if not more, successful. I hope we continue to talk and maybe work with each other at some point. So thank you for spending the time and talking to me. See you again sometime soon.
Thanks a lot, Kaushik. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.